They're so small, yet look at their exports. Look at it. I would say that export is not tangible. That's this. I think the human resource capital, that is also very important. And as you mentioned, the people contact, and obviously you can't just rule out so many options which you have. Over to you, Abdullah Gul Sahab.
I would say that friends, not masters. they must understand that policy is acceptable anymore. And especially with the SCO on the rise and BRICS banking, etc., and China dominating the region, and Pakistan standing shoulder to shoulder, and the new phrase has been introduced by President Xi Jinping that Iron Brothers. You know, our friendship was higher than the Himalayas and deeper than the oceans and sweeter than the honey, but now we are Iron Brothers. And they must understand that we can be friends, but we can't be subservient to their designs. And Pakistan is a square peg in the round hole of their new world order. Pakistan will, be never, going to fit in over there. They must rethink about their new world order, which turned out to be a new disorder to the world. Instead of bringing peace to the world, they have brought wars. They have, been very unkind to the humanity, and they kept silent when the atrocities were going on and still going on in Kashmir and in Palestine. So what is going on? So I think dialogue should be initiated rather than a clash to be taken. I think this is my take.
All right. Thank you so much, Abdullah Gul Sahab. Thank you so much, Kazmi Sahab, for your participation and your time. And ma'am, it's always a pleasure to have you in the show, ma'am. So that's all we have for this. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz. Have a great weekend.
In the era of global news coverage, we aim to tell the truth through meticulous discussions and in-depth analyses about stories that matter the most. We underline key events as and when they happen. Watch Newsroom with me, Umar Khalid Bas, for a daily roundup of the latest international and local top stories.
Politics is not everybody's cup of tea. In Pakistan, politics has endless possibilities. Politics is the art of the possible. But we have got you covered. debate, for in-depth analysis, and insight. Watch Politics Today every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday at 9:05 p.m. with me, Mahrukh.
Choose less over more in it. Be satisfied with what you have, even if it is less than what others have. In fact, prefer to have less.
What is the real Pakistani society about? What are our beliefs and what are our aspirations? Reflecting the true picture of our otherwise misunderstood Pakistani society. Reality versus perception. Where do we see our place in the global society? Join me, Fatma Shaheen, in rediscovering the real Pakistani society.
Sticking up for the unpopular, calling out the controversial, upholding the right of free speech, giving you all the perspectives and letting you understand the true one. And I seek views and opinions. My name is mahrukh. Watch Perspective every Thursday and Friday at 9:05 p.m. on PTV World.
You are watching PTV World.
Ballot to end malpractices continued for the past 30 years. Prime Minister distributes checks under the Asas and Kamyab Jawan programs in Sahiwal. President Dr. Arif Alvi directs Federal Board of Revenue to recover over 14 million rupees in a bogus tax refunds case. Rejects FBR's representation against the order of Federal Tax Ombudsman. Pakistan warns that India plans a false flag operation to justify its aggression against Pakistan. Addressing UN General Assembly, Pakistan's permanent representative, Ambassador Munir Akram, says India concocts fake news to malign Pakistan and perpetrates terrorism and subversion against Pakistan. Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa pays two-day official visit to Qatar, discusses bilateral security and defense cooperation and geopolitical security environment in his meeting with Qatari Emir and other leaders. A bomb blast occurs near the Israeli embassy in New Delhi. Meanwhile, fresh clashes erupt during farmers' protest in the Indian capital. Pakistan beat South Africa by 7 wickets in the first cricket test match at the National Stadium, Karachi, to take a 1-0 lead in the two-match series. Action was live on PTV Sports. PTV World, I'm Ahmed Nawaz. For further details and live streaming, log on to our website. You may also log on to our social media handles. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Perspective.
What is the real Pakistani society about? What are our beliefs and what are our aspirations? Reflecting the true picture of our otherwise misunderstood Pakistani society. Reality versus perception. Where do we see our place in the global society? Join me, Fatma Shaheen, in rediscovering the real Pakistani society.
In the era of global news coverage, we aim to tell the truth. Through meticulous discussions and in-depth analyses about stories that matter the most. We underline key events as and when they happen. Watch Newsroom with me, Umar Khalid Bhatt, for a daily roundup of the latest international and local top stories.
valleys of heaven. The days we spent, the nights we cried. We wondered, but knew not why. For God hath sent us the don't please believe us. Just hurt and lonely. Therefore shine. There will come a time when we shall laugh and smile.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. Whether the rifts in the PDM that are emerging mean that the government has no more challenges from that side, we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the price hike, inflation, governance, which seem to be at this time main issues for the government. Will PDM prove to be, as time has gone on, it has proved to be a non-starter? Is the government correct in assuming that that kind of opposition that it seemed to offer from the start has fizzled out? We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the challenges that this government nevertheless faces at this time. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Javed Jatoon, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Abdul Samad Yaqoob, who's leader PTI. Thank you for being with us. We'll also be joined by Dr. Zubair Iqbal Khawari, who is a senior analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Javed sir, what do you think about PDM and the fact that, there are reports of there being rifts within the PDM itself? Of course, we've also been talking about the fact that the stakes for every political party, particularly the two main PPP and PMLN, are very different. Do you think that's the reason that they are, unable or perhaps finding it difficult to trudge along with each other?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. I think for any political movement in any country, in any society, you need to have a cohesive and very common political objectives to achieve. As far as Pakistan Democratic Movement is concerned, it was a non-starter right from the beginning. And I think we have been talking in these talk shows that politically divergent groupings and politically disparate political parties with different ideologies and no common ground to challenge the government. I think that was the flip side of the movement. And in my personal opinion, it was more of a media hype rather than a very substantive challenge to the sitting government in Islamabad, because the two main political parties, particularly Pakistan Muslim League and Pakistan People's Party, everybody knows that they were under tremendous pressure because of the ongoing investigations, corruption charges, and the cases being constituted against them. And their main objective was to wriggle out of that pressure being put on them, or the heat being generated by the National Accountability Bureau. And you said that why? I think it was quite obvious that when you go for a very self-centered political movement, it will never end up successful as far as Pakistan's political landscape is concerned. They were not talking about the problems of the people of Pakistan. They were not talking about...
They tried to. Of course, we saw the shift in narratives. We saw that it started from anti-establishment and moved on to price hike and inflation. They tried to, I think, and then there was the Mehngai March as far as the PMLN is concerned. So they tried to amass a host of issues into their opposition movement. But that doesn't seem to have translated into the kind of support that they thought they would garner.
To an extent, you're right. But if you look at the main thrust of the political movement, we know that right from the beginning, it was basically constituted to challenge the sitting government to de-seat Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and the slogan was "Vote ko izzat ho," and then they started challenging the security establishment in Pakistan, which rarely happens in any democratic society. A leader sitting in London was challenging Pakistan's security establishment, and particularly Pakistan's military leadership. The two individuals, the Chief of the Army Staff and the Chief of the Inter-Services Intelligence, which I think really didn't go well with the people of Pakistan. I agree partially with you that when they started realizing that people are talking about food inflation, they are talking about unemployment, they are talking about the side effects of the pandemic, the economy taking a very, very severe hit because of that. And I think it was a confused signal on part of the PDM that in tandem they started talking about the inflation, the food inflation, and the difficulties people of Pakistan are facing. But because of the confusing signal, people stopped believing what they were telling the people. We all know that they didn't have a very common agenda. First you wanted to overthrow the government, and then you started giving the deadlines for the government to vacate the seat of power in Islamabad, and then it went on and on. Then even today, nobody knows that what they want to achieve right now. The march towards Islamabad is nowhere to be seen. Resignations are nowhere to be witnessed, and I think because of the differences which have really surfaced in the recent past because of Pakistan People's Party's flip-flop situation, and I believe that it is on the deathbed now.
Samad Sahab, let's leave what the PDM is actually going to, whether it's actually going to be a source of, a formidable opposition for the PTI at this time. But what about yourself? Your performance at this time, the fact that Transparency International's you heard the 4 points having gone up as far as corruption is concerned, and that is such a strong narrative that has been on the part of the government, on the part of the Prime Minister. It is what PTI has stood for. What do you think it means for the direction in which the country at this time is headed?
First of all, I mean, when it comes to the government, all that matter is the performance. I mean, the people, the nation is what the nation expects from the government is their performance.
Are you satisfied with the performance?
Well, no, at least not fully satisfied, but I would say that the direction which we are heading to the direction, at least up to that extent, I am satisfied.
You're satisfied that the government is headed in the right direction?
Yes, I would say that we are heading to the right direction, but not at that pace which we supposed to head towards. Because,
and what do you blame for that?
When we talk about the corruption, I mean,
who do you blame for that? That according to you,
the system.
You were not anticipating things to be as bad as they were.
No, we are collectively the part of the system. I mean, when we talk about the police, I mean, if, for example, if we take the police, if we can bring a change on the top hierarchy, a top echelon, but the fact is that we haven't yet, bring any reforms on the lower level, on SHO level, on ASI level. They are still on that track, but we are trying to, because this police has been formed from over decades.
No, but police reform were also on the agenda in 2002. There was a lot of work that had been done in the area, and then it never happened. What's stopping the government from, heading in that direction? Don't you think that there's a lot of back and forth match, so to speak? There's a lot of exchange going on between the government and the opposition, a lot of dialogue going on that is perhaps not needed. I mean, if PDM is not really in opposition, which you are saying that it is not, a lot of people believe that it is not, then why this needless exchange back and forth between the opposition and the government?
See, being a democrat, irrespective of I belong to the ruling party or I belong to the opposition party, but this credit goes to the opposition that, okay, they have successfully formed an alliance. But the narrative, the narrative which they tried to sell to the nation was completely rejected by the nation overall. Because toppling government or criticizing or getting out of their homes and doing rallies is fine as far as if it is based on the objective is a genuine issue.
But why leave the PDM out of it? But why do you think that you have not headed in the direction that you should have perhaps?
No, what I have admitted is that yes, we have not achieved
the pace,
that pace which people were expecting from us. which they were hoping from us. Yes, we haven't, because this police system or this Patwari system, it took decades.
But it's been there. I mean, of course, you have a lot of people who have experience, whether they are now a part of your party or they were earlier a part of other parties within your party. I will come back to you. Let me go to Dr. Zubair. Zubair sir, you know, of course, in terms of experience, one can't deny that PTI itself has a lot of people, you know, who have been within the system, who have been part of the system under, you know, perhaps the banner of other political parties. So there is, you know, that experience is there. You know, one can't completely discount experience in that sense of the word. Why do you think, you know, according to Samad Saab, perhaps, you know, he's saying the direction, he agrees is right, the government is headed in the right direction, but there is not that pace, according to him, that should have been there. Why do you think that is?
Well, thank you very much, Mahrukh. While we understand that there are many people in the government who have previously experienced, but we must also understand and appreciate this fact that including the Prime Minister Imran Khan and many of his members in the leadership roles are not having any experience of going as a leadership role in the government. Some of the experts are coming from the private sector and they are special assistants to the Prime Minister. They do not know, they don't have that experience of running the government. Having said that, this does not absolve them of any responsibility of the governance that they had promised that they wanted to bring into Pakistan. I think that some tall claims were made and they were out of proportion and then blown up by the media, and also the expectations were raised by the PTI leadership. They did not understand that how much blown up these claims are, and they did not understand that how much expectations they are raising, because the people of Pakistan, they were suffering at the hands of the two political parties earlier, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz and PPP. But when they were having those expectations and they were ballooned up by these false claims, and then the expectations, when they fall down, then the hopes are also getting diminished, getting hit high time. When we say that we do not have time, the federal government is into its third year and their KP government is into its 8th year. So if you have a comparison with the other governments, so they have got the experience.
Don't you think that it has to do with the style of governance, the style of engaging the opposition? Because when we talk about reform, when we talk about the fact that reform, police, judicial reform, all of those things are on the agenda and have been for a while. The point is, the government isn't getting to it, whether we say that it doesn't have the right pace or it's slower than it should have been, because it seems to be concentrating to a huge extent on what the opposition is saying. And there is this dialogue that is going on every day. There's a presser, there is from the government, from the opposition, there's a lot of waving of different pages, and there is that engagement on a whole new level perhaps. That is what I want to come to.
Well, Mahrukh, I'm not a great fan of this argument that the opposition need to extend its hand to support and have a kind of a larger agenda for the government. The opposition is there to oppose you, hence the name it has. It is the opposition.
No, I'm not saying that the opposition should extend its support. What I'm trying to say is, let me clarify. What I'm trying to say is that by engaging the opposition to a level where the government is doing at this time, they're failing to concentrate perhaps on areas which they could, like reform, like change in the true sense of the word, which has to translate to the grassroots level, which is what this government has stood for. I will come back to you. Let me go with the same question to Javed.
I think it's a very, very valid point you have raised, Mahrukh. I think a lot of expectations when Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf presented its manifesto, they made promises which were primarily could not have been fulfilled by any government in Pakistan, given the challenges, the myriads of problems Pakistan is faced with today. The kind of jobs they promised, I don't believe could have been possible the kind of house to be constructed, so on and so forth. And then I think once again you're right that they lost the focus because of their excessive engagement or obsession with the opposition parties. Because when you opposition, this is what opposition does. They keep engaging the government of the day, and then the government loses the focus. And I think this is the objective of the opposition, to keep the government engaged on non-issues, and then the government loses the focus what they should be doing or intend to be doing. Same thing happened with Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government. Look, they have got no narrative. Everything they say is a counter narrative. What opposition says, a lot of spokespersons from the government side, they come forward and they start the kind of rhetoric which people do not like anymore, because what people would like to have is the resolution of the problems, the rising prices of daily commodities of daily consumption, and the creation of jobs. And of course, the certain things are not in capacity of the government because of the pandemic issue. Pandemic has wreaked havoc with every economy in the world. Pakistan is no exception. I think we must understand that government came into power in a situation, and Prime Minister himself admitted that he was not properly briefed about the gigantic issues which Pakistan is faced with. I think it was a kind of a realism on his part, though he was criticized because of his statement. But I think it's a realistic statement. And if you fast forward the situation, right now government is probably lost the course. They have not stayed the course, and the issues are still there. For example, in my opinion, they need to go for the administrative reforms first. They need to go for the judicial reforms. They need to go for the financial reforms as well. And holistically speaking, the societal transformation or a paradigm shift in a society is required. And everybody expected, particularly the youth of Pakistan, expected Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf to perform on these fronts. I think, unfortunately, 2.5 years down the road, the promises probably still to be fulfilled, and the kind of desperation which is spreading in the society is because of the expectations of the people of Pakistan with the PTI government. And I think, in my opinion, especially speaking, the youth of Pakistan, which comprises more than 60% of Pakistan's population.
When the government, when we form the government with our allied parties, when we come in the power, we have a different challenges. There are different sectors. Perhaps we have achieved in one sector in economy, or we have not that achieved in foreign policy, or sort of such thing.
Which sector do you think you've achieved in?
Economy.
Economy.
Indeed, yes, indeed. In economy, we have performed much better. If we compare to the 2018, if you compare, even Shabar Zaidi has also said that it was the worst situation. It was the worst situation on 30th June 2018. If you compare the fiscal deficit, the current account deficit, the exports, there was no increase.
But what about inflation and price hike?
Yeah,
what about the continuous increase in, for example, electricity, for example, the gas, the price of gas, at this time, which is something that all citizens are concerned about. All of those things are right there. You talk about, whether you talk about eggs or you talk about sugar or you talk about, it's all the same. You think people are satisfied with the way the
No, when you talk about, when you ask about this energy sector, these are the, these contracts were signed, and which is not at least acceptable to us. It's sort of the contract made with this broadsheet type of contract. Even if you are not consuming the electricity, you are paying them. Even if you don't consume them, you have to pay the 60% of that capacity of the production.
And how long will that continue happening, in your opinion?
It depends on we're trying to negotiate with them to make a new contract, or renew the contract, so that we don't have to pay whether we consume it or not consume it. So when then you have asked about the X, that is entirely a different topic.
No, but it matters to the person, a normal person. I'm sure it matters to you.
Everything matters to the person. Everything matters to the common person. It affects the X. That was due to the COVID, when the prices of the chicken were suddenly dropped to the 40, 50, 60 rupees per kg, and there is
of course, there's always a reason for whatever is happening.
honestly, the price hikes or inflation is actually the challenge for the government, which we have to tackle this issue. If we, by the time, if we can control this inflation or bring it to the normal, not to the alerting position, we will be, I mean, successful. But if we fail to control these price hikes, definitely people will not. I mean, we cannot.
But I'm sure the government is satisfied with the fact that, you know, the opposition has not been able to draw the kind of crowds that they had wished for. There's no denying that. I mean, an amalgam of 11 parties or 10 parties at this time, failing to draw the kind of support that could have then proved a tough competition to you, didn't happen. So, you know, your resistance in the beginning and then letting them go perhaps worked. Do you think that, you know, that might work also in engaging the opposition?
See, if you ask me that ruling party should engage, yes, at every level they should engage the opposition, whether inside the parliament or outside the parliament. But I have witnessed so many things when the things were, I mean, when we ask for the NAB reforms or any legislation, when we seek their cooperation, they always come up with their demands and ask us to comply with these demands, and that was their personal agenda, I mean, for the NAB cases and sort of that. But the thing is, these 11 parties, when they form this alliance and come, they actually, when this in Gujranwala, when Mia Sahab maligned the institute, a certain, the nation is not going to buy that narrative. The reason they were flopped or failed is only reason is because they maligned the institute.
No, but they didn't. But according to them, they didn't buy any narrative, now, because they didn't buy the narrative of anti-establishment. They didn't buy the narrative of you know, price hike inflation, which is something that concerns people at this time. But do you think it's about credibility? Do you think that it's not about? I mean, I'm going to ask you a tough question. Do you think it's not about your popularity? It's about who's less popular at this time. It's about the fact that there is an opposition, which is, there is somebody, if you talk about the PMLN at this time, there is this criticism that is coming from Nawaz Sharif Saab, who's sitting out of the country. You know, he's sitting in London, but he's making these speeches against the establishment, against the government. Do you think a part of the credibility issue comes there? And then, on the other hand, there is the government, where there are these, at this time, unfortunately, issues of poor governance and of price hike inflation. So it's really about being not popular and unpopular, but popular and less popular.
Exactly, you are right. For the sake of argument, if I admit that, yes, despite the fact that our performance is so poor, despite the fact, for the sake of argument, even they couldn't take advantage of this. The opposition is failed to take advantage of this just because of their credibility. I mean, their intentions. People are not trusting them. People are not trusting them. People may criticize our government, our performance, but they are not still hoping from them any. Yes.
Right. Zubair Saab, do you agree? Do you think that there is, at this time, you know, all over, there is this despondency, for the lack of a better word, in terms of people's support, that, you know, they don't want to support the opposition, but they're not, you know, feeling great about the performance of the government at this time either. Do you think the credibility is the issue? What do you think is really the problem?
Well, thank you very much. I thought I should fall asleep because perhaps you have forgotten me and left me in the lurch. I've been waiting for such a long time. I should have been better placed in the studio. But anyhow, the point here is not a matter of popularity or unpopularity. The point here is any government is chosen by the people of that country to run their affairs for a certain period of time. This is very, very unfortunate. And it was the previous government, it was the PTI which started all the campaigning, and now in the PTI government's tenure, the PML and all the opposition parties are getting together to go against the government. I think the mandate that has been given by the people of Pakistan to whatever the party they are running, whether they are federal government or any provincial government, they should be given a complete time. And if we have agreed on a timeline for 5 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever is the time, we must go on with this. Yes, it is the right of the opposition and opposition parties to protest against the government's policies. yes, it is the right of the people to criticize the policies of the government. But saying after every 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years that this party should go away, this government should be thrown out of these kind of agitation, this is completely unacceptable in any democratic system. The people are having expectations, there is no doubt about it. But we should not make any scapegoats or any martyrs here for this government or that government. The PTI government should complete its tenure and then go to the public and then see that whether the people are responding to their policies, good or bad, governance system, good or bad, then they should be given that chance.
Do you think that the government at this time is threatened by, let's leave the PDM, let's leave the opposition? What are some of the main challenges you think the government faces at this time? They seem to be from within.
Yes, it is. It is. The enemy is within. Enemy is the performance. Enemy is the whole governance paradigm that they are running at the moment. The people are more concerned about the governance system that we have. Yes, the problems are gigantic. Yes, the scale of the issues that the biggest government is facing is pretty huge, and they cannot solve the problems overnight or spreading the so-called magical wand. But unfortunately, this government does not seem to be doing anything in any direction. There are few lights, shining lights here and there, but on the whole, they are just fighting against themselves. They are not coming out of the mode of the opposition of blaming this party or that party or coming against this person or that person. They should be focusing more on their performance, on their goals, on the indicators, on the key performance that they want to deliver. The opposition will keep shouting. But for me, opposition is just a bubble at this point in time. Maybe a mountain being made out of mold. They are just trying to make themselves more relevant. They shouldn't be, the government should not be worried about it. The government should be focusing more on whatever they can do to improve their system. And by the way, it's not the economy only that the decisions are made. It is the political economy. They are integrated these days. Many decisions are made which are purely economic, but they are affected by the political dimensions and vice versa. Like you make political decisions on the basis of economy. So if this government is making any decisions purely on economic reasons, they are seriously flawed. And if they are making any decisions on the politics only, again, they need to reinvest and revisit their policies. These both things go hand in hand, and then you need to make a decision right at the middle of their career in this government. 2.5 years have passed. And just recently, Prime Minister was very right when he was addressing to his minister that half of the tenure has already gone, and this is the time that we have to rethink about the future. Now, no more blame game, please. No more finger pointing. No more accusations. Just focus on your performance. Let the opposition cry, and maybe 1 or 2 ministers can take care of them in the television or the radio program shows. The rest of the cabinet should not be coming on the television on every night and talking about the different policies of the opposition parties. They should be focusing more on working in their ministries, in their departments, and the delivery areas that the people are expecting them. That maybe the whole drama of this media can a bit go down, but on the whole, this is just hysterical things that are going on. This is just melodramatic elements from both sides. The PTI government should not fall prey to the tactics
go
of
to
the
Abdul Samad Sahab. Samad Sahab, how do you answer this? The fact that, of course, engagement is there. There is no denying that. You're saying that perhaps it's not, it's not wrong for the government to engage the opposition. But you saw what happened with the PDM. I mean, there was this initial opposition to the Jalsas, whether for whatever reason, whether it was COVID or whatever. But the moment the government sort of, accepted it, they laid down the fact that these are the risks involved, and this is what you're going to do, they seem to have fizzled. Do you think that that is a strategy you can use as far as the opposition is concerned, otherwise also?
Well, I think this PDM or this government, let's wait for the Senate election, and things will be, lot of things will be changed and things will be better. Because when we go for the legislation, we have less numbers in the Senate. So once we get the numbers, there will be a great change.
You will move towards reform?
We are going to engage, even the session is going on, and we are going to engage the opposition at a different level. I mean, we have changed the strategy to engage them in the parliament, and then we'll see what the result comes.
But what about the opposition that, for example, on broadsheet, we are seeing this opposition reacting to, even Azmat Saeed and all of that. There doesn't seem to be any agreement even on an issue like broadsheet.
See, the objective of opposition is always to stay relevant, stay in media. So they will always create a hype or criticize whether it is Azmat Sheikh or whether it is a chairman NAB. So it is always, it's a tradition, if you see in Musharraf era or even People's Party or 30 years ago, it is always that you have to be relevant, you have to stay relevant, and for that you have to do a propaganda or like this when even the opposition is the first time, in past 2-3 months they are on the roads now. Before that they only come in the floor of the house and yell on the government, and then that was all, that the all drama was done over there.
Do you think there will be a march to Islamabad or no?
It doesn't matter. If they will come, they will not come because of their failure, because they failed everywhere. They have failed in Multan. They will be badly exposed in Islamabad, and they will not take risks to be exposed, to get exposed in Islamabad. So I don't think that.
Javed sir, do you agree? You think that there will not be a march to Islamabad? Because we saw what happened with the resignations.
Absolutely. I think it has already fizzled out, and you really can't gather the people to the extent that they can pose a threat to the sitting government in Islamabad. If you can muster a support of about 1 million people and bring them to Islamabad, I think that could be the deciding factor. But if you are only able to bring 10, 15 or 20,000 people to the capital, this is not going to make any difference as far as Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government is concerned. But I think I agree with this analogy, with this notion that PTI faces more threats internally from within rather than from without. And 2.5 years gone and 2.5 years left. It is now extremely important for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf to focus on what they can achieve in the remaining time period. I think they need to initiate.
Do you think people are of course, there's like I said to Samad Saab, there will always be a reason. If there's an increase in power, tariff or whatever, as far as for the people, if you talk about the gas, if you talk about inflation, you talk about price hike, all of that, there will always be a reason. Do you think people are going to agree to look at those reasons if the government keeps on going back and saying, well, it has to do with the past? Do you think that narrative now perhaps has been overdone? It needs to stop?
Mahrukh, as far as these unpopular decisions are concerned, I don't think any government would like to take such decisions which become unpopular. I think there are factors and very pressing factors which have forced the government to take these very unpopular decisions, like increasing the power tariff and so many other factors. I think it is about time that government should start engaging the opposition parties. Engaging political parties would expose the opposition itself, because if they present an agenda of change, now like Samad Saab said, if Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf achieves a comfortable majority in the Senate, I think they will be able to do the kind of legislation which they always wanted to, or rather they wanted the people to believe that they couldn't introduce the kind of legislation because of the lack of support in the Senate. And now if they achieve that simple majority, they will have no excuse at all. And in my opinion, I think agenda of change should be presented at the floor of the House, and then government should engage the opposition political parties, and if they are unable to respond to the government positively, they will be cast in a bad light as far as the people are concerned.
What do you think will
happen? But I think there has to be a clarity of thought on part of the government. You are again and again insisting, and I agree with you that government needs to present the agenda of the change, and the forum is the floor of the House. You go there, you engage the political parties, you tell them this you intend to do. If it is a positive agenda, if it is in the interest of the people of Pakistan, And if the opposition doesn't respond positively, I think people of Pakistan are well aware because of the media, social media, the traditional media. They would understand that it's the opposition which is playing the spoilers game. But at least you should present your agenda.
Right.
And if it is not responded positively, then you can always say that, well, we have got a positive notion about it, but opposition is definitely not siding with the government.
Let me go to Zubair Saab before he says I've forgotten him again. Ji, Zubair Saab, do you think that there is going to be that kind of engagement as far as the opposition is concerned, or you think that, you know, if the government is right when they say that all the opposition care about is their own accountability and the fact that the government compromise on it, do you think that engagement is a possibility for the future?
Well, for me, as a student of communication, sometimes ignoring some narrative or a person can be a good strategy. If you simply ignore them and do not talk about them for some time, they will be clamoring for that attention that they are getting from the government at this point. So for me,
it is the media gives them that attention regardless, right?
Sorry?
The media regardless gives them that attention.
No, I don't think so. If there are some certain areas of activities that are coming from the government, in addition to this game of accusation, the media will definitely give them coverage. At the moment, from the government side, only one often hyped song is again repeated again and again and again. And I'm telling you, the PDI representative is sitting here, the people and in the media have almost learned them by heart, whatever they are saying for the last 2.5 years. I can say that without opening the mute of my TV that what this minister is talking about. So they need to talk something different. They need to talk about their performance. They need to talk about their agenda. They need to talk about their manifesto, what they have brought about the people. So when they will be talking about these positive things, and the people are thirsty about these positive things, and they are very much eager and waiting and all ears about these positive activities and the performance indicators. Once they will start talking about these things and not beating about the bush again and again, they will be getting more ears and getting more consolation from the people of Pakistan. And secondly, when Jalunsa was saying, and I agree that they will be having, when they have majority in the Senate of Pakistan, they will be having more liberty to make their laws. But I'm telling you, Jalunsa, this is the last excuse that they are having. And soon this excuse is going away from them that we do not have the power to legislate. They will get that power to legislate. Perhaps getting more legislation is not the problem of Pakistan. The problem is that we are already an overly legislated society and we need the implementation of those laws that are already there. The governance structure improvement does not need that much legislation. The working on the ground improvement does not need any sort of more legislation. We have enough of the laws of the legal system and the policies and the procedures in every system. I have worked in bureaucracy for about 18, 20 years and I could see that where are those laws and legislations are there. The problem is the implementation. Problem is on the ground. The problem is understanding the real issues. Problem is not there in the legislation, and getting more legislation will not solve any of the nightmares that the government is facing. This is the high time. They should pull up their socks and start doing something for the people.
Samad Sahab, your
yes, I agree with Dr. Zubair. Dr. Zubair Sahab, the performance not always depends on the legislation. I mean, even if we are successfully done some legislation, that will not affect on the Punjab. Punjab had its own constituent assembly. So he's right. I mean, the government is always judged by the performance, where sometimes we lack in different sectors. I mean, as I have already mentioned.
Do you think that there will be? I mean, I know you've already said that the government were plans to concentrate on performance and all that. Do you think there will be a shift in the way that things are done? You think that the people will be able to see that there will be a change in policy towards the opposition, towards engaging them, towards performance, all of that. More of a across the board change in the way things are done.
Now, when we talk about engagement with these opposition leaders, opposition parties, what does it mean actually? I mean, when we engage with them at different levels, again I said that when their demands come, we cannot comply with them, with their demands. I mean, there was a deadlock. Initially there was a deadlock on forming the standing committees. There was 6 months. It took 6 months to form the standing committees, and the deadlock was, their demand was to get the chairmanship of PSE. I mean, and once the Shehbaz Sharif got the being elected as a chairman PSE, and later, just because the objective was he want to get issue his production orders for himself. So later he resigned, and then Rana Tanveer, he became. So their intentions or their demands are always for their personal gains. I mean, if it was for the nation or for the positive things, it would be easy for us to engage with them. But whenever we engage with them, they come with
no, but don't engage with them. That's what we've been talking about. Perhaps you engage too much with the opposition. Isn't that one way?
No, we haven't engaged that much with the opposition, which we supposed to engage, which a ruling party is supposed to engage.
You think that more effort needs to be made in that direction?
Indeed, more efforts need to